Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, for the last generation,
I'm
you have a choice.
the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations with
I
that
realize
woman.
that this is something
Miss
he
Lewinsky.
isn't
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Backfire. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Franklin Chansey, John Stanberry.
Hey.
Welcome to the studio again this morning. And Daniel Brantley.
Hi.
Yeah, Daniel, our engineer that is very near, says hi to everybody. Minimum wage. You heard the latest?
I've not heard the latest. What is the latest?
Let's see. Minimum wage, $15. The target was more than twice the federal floor. This was of $7.25. Looks like California and New York would phase in the increases over several years, but now Governor Jerry Brown struck a deal among top legislators, labor leaders, and his Democratic administration in California to reach $15 an hour by 2022 for large businesses and a year later for companies with 25 employees or less.
That's a very small business.
Yes.
I mean, a convenience store. A guy with one convenience store probably has 25 employees.
Well, that's right. So, anyway, they're making a push for the 15. This is stirring up New York to go faster, too. So,
Well, there are some people that'll benefit from that. Citizens in Arizona and Nevada and Texas that don't have those laws will benefit from the increased jobs that will continue to flee California.
What do you think? You think you can raise minimum wage that much and just make the world keep turning?
Can you raise it that
Yeah.
much?
I mean, that's what, 50%?
Yep.
Sure, but hasn't been raised in 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a raise over a 10, 11-year period.
Uh-huh.
Why
Can't
that?
be
Why
done, sure.
15, Franklin? Why not 20?
Well, it's been done in some other places. Their economy hasn't tanked. So, I mean, Seattle did it as a city.
Let me ask
and they
you,
haven't-
I know
they haven't tanked.
you'll get apoplectic here, but that's actually kind of basically Marxist theory, and anybody that subscribes
Marxist
to it
theory?
is at least sympathetic to Marxist theory, which is a control.
Well, then all the Republicans who voted for minimum wage increases over the years, and there have been hundreds and hundreds of them, were all Marxists.
Well, ask me my opinion on it, Franklin. I've always
You would have
opposed it.
voted for 'em
I'm
because
no,
they had
I
a
wouldn't have
Republican-
voted for it. I wouldn't have voted for it.
You would have voted for them for doing it.
Look, I would have criticized them for doing it. Anybody that thinks that a controlled, planned economy is better than a market-driven economy, which what this is. Now, you're right, Franklin. It's just kind of cutting around the edges. Although when you double it, it's one thing to vote for a 20-cent increase. It's another thing to vote for doubling it. You are basically advocating for a planned economy versus a market-driven economy. And planned economies are provably a disaster everywhere they've been done. And they eventually, most of them, quite frankly, ended up in totalitarian regimes where people ended up being murdered.
John,
But hey, we wouldn't want to get involved in that.
We've had a planned economy for 80
No, we've
years.
had a market-driven economy with some planning around the edges. And the point here, Franklin, is how much do you do? And it's one thing to try and set rules for the market economy to work within. When you go in and start setting prices, that's a completely different thing.
Let's change the schematic here a little bit. Let's say that you own Cook's Food Store.
Okay.
Franklin. And all of a sudden, you're being told you've got to pay your employees $15 an hour.
Okay.
All right, double what you're paying them.
Which doubles your labor cost.
Doubles your labor cost. What do you
Well,
think?
no, you don't know if they're all being paid minimum wage to begin with.
Okay, $8 or
You don't know
$9.
that.
$8 or $9, $10.
It's a significant.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
We're talking
point,
about
but let's not say something we don't
percentages
know.
then. Let's say percentage.
It's a significant increase.
Do you think that? How would you handle that? Would you just immediately go through the grocery store and jack all the prices up? You'd have to do something to pay them, wouldn't you?
I presume that there will be some.
So everything in the store would go up 30, 40% immediately?
No, because labor is only one portion of the store's cost.
If you had a marginal employee, Franklin, do you keep him or do you let him go?
I don't know.
Well, I can tell you statistically what happens is employment falls. People let people go when they raise the labor cost. If you've got, for example, if you run a hamburger joint and you have $100 to pay people, let's say you're paying them $10 an hour. If you've got $100 an hour for labor, then that's 10 people that you can employ. When they raise it to $15 an hour, what you have to do is you have about 2 to 3 of those people that you let go. So all of the people out there, and that's what's so hard, we are so economically illiterate here. We think we can do these things and they'll be static and there'll be no pushback. What happens is you tell the guys who get the $15, aren't you happy? Oh, by the way, don't talk to the 2 guys who are now completely unemployed. They're not as happy.
But going back to my question, Franklin, think about what you have to do. You own the Cook's Food Store. That's your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All of a sudden you get slapped with this.
Okay.
You've immediately got to go raise the prices on everything just to cover your costs.
Or let people go.
Or let people go.
Those are your choices.
Okay, if you say so.
All right, what would you do?
Well, first of all, what I'm going to look at is the history of minimum wage increases in the country, and that has not traditionally.
No, Franklin, wait a minute. He's asking you to put yourself in the place of an owner of a business, and you go to some
absolutely.
kind of political dissertation about fairness.
Guess what else? His competitors are in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just that.
No,
store.
I'm glad you said that. So what you're saying is, since his competitors are in the same boat, then he'll probably raise his prices to cover this increased cost, right?
That's right. Is that
Where's
right?
that money come from? Who pays that?
Wait a minute, let me finish. Now then, I'm retired. I've got my savings account. I've got my Social Security. All of a sudden, my prices have gone up 40%. Let's say 40%. Who's suffering from this?
Who's suffering?
Yeah,
Right.
Who's suffering?
Well,
Somebody's suffering.
Well, it's entirely possible, and I assume your argument is that the people at the lowest end of the spectrum are going to have the hardest time because the prices have gone up.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I think everybody is, but that's just one of them. Yes.
Proportionately, they get hit the worst.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. What about kids going to school and stuff like this? They're going to have to pay more for their hamburgers.
Okay.
Well, who pays for that? You and
Of
your
course,
liberals
John.
have passed a law to make the unions happy, but you've
How
made
did that help
everyone
them?
pay for it who can least afford it, and you don't care apparently.
Actually, John, what I care about is economic growth, and the facts are that when we've done this in the past, it's actually generated economic growth. That's a fact. It may be an inconvenient
Franklin,
one for your theories.
If you really want to go down that road, we'll talk about it. The cities that did it independently have suffered. Now, as a whole, if we had a 5 cent or a 10-cent increase, yeah, we've benefited a little bit in some studies. But across the whole, when you start talking about doubling your labor costs, you are going to damage the economy, and you're going to damage the poorest people who can afford it the least. But y'all don't care, because guess what? Your union lackeys that'll spend tens of millions of dollars for the Democratic candidates, their contracts are all tied to minimum wage, and they're tied in multiples. So like a union worker gets 3 times the minimum wage. So when you go from $7.50 an hour to $15 an hour, that guy's going to get about a $25 or $30 per hour increase. So yeah, he's real happy.
The boogeyman unions are coming to steal
Franklin,
your jobs.
I'm sorry to bother
No,
you
it's
with
because,
matter.
John, you
they
talk-
are
no,
negotiated as
John,
multiples of minimum
John,
wage.
The fact,
All right, do you
the
deny
fact
that?
is that you
Do
go
you
through
deny
your
that?
entire. Some of them are, not all.
All right. Let me ask you a question then. You're over here defending a doubling of the minimum wage. Are you defending a tripling of a $45 an hour employee's wage?
That depends, John. That depends on whether the CEO of the company is making $97 million
Oh,
a
so
year.
once again, it's class warfare, folks. There's some
It's
rich guy
never
out there.
class warfare in your butt as long as the money's going to the top. That's not class warfare.
Well, let me ask you a question,
I think
Franklin.
it is class warfare, and I think those people at the top have been raping the people at the
All right.
bottom for the last 15
Good
years.
Marxist
and it's
theory
time
there,
for
folks.
it to stop.
Good Marxist theory.
The cooks are supposed to take withdrawals from their
Franklin,
bank accounts
let
and
me ask you a
pay
question.
the employees the rest of their life.
If you do this and
More
you
money.
double, now he's talking about Cook's Food Store. Cook's
I'm
is a
using that
little
as an
local
example.
company, and we've got to buy our food somewhere locally. It's hard to import food. But let's say you were running a manufacturing plant. Oh, I don't know, maybe a woolen mill here in town that competes with woolen mills in Indonesia. And you come along as your good liberal and you're going to take care of all your union buddies and you're going to double the labor costs. What do you think that does to the companies that are really struggling to try and keep manufacturing jobs here in the United States? What does it do to them?
Well, since they're competing in what's supposed to be a free market, I guess it has some pressure on them, John.
Yeah, so what do they do? What's the easiest thing for them to do?
Some of them move.
Yeah, they close. So explain this to me, Franklin.
John,
You're
we
all-
have a
no, wait minute.
4.6%
Tell the people that
unemployment rate in
lose
this
the
county.
tell the people that
4.6%.
so in other words, folks, if you're one of the people that lose their jobs because of Franklin's union buying
Or
plans,
maybe you're able to go out and get a better job at a better place.
okay. Folks, feed your family on that sentiment from Franklin.
Oh, you're really concerned about that, John. Please.
Franklin,
The
the fact
problem here is that you go through your entire daily life with a series of fixed notions in your mind that really have no relation to people on the ground. And all you do is say, oh, well, I heard this because Ronald Reagan said it in a speech 30 years ago, and it must be true.
Well, I don't know,
It isn't
Franklin.
true.
Well, I don't know, Franklin. Some of us have finance degrees, which is actually what my college degree is in.
Well,
I'm
I'm glad
sorry
that is.
that in a finance degree, we study things like
yes,
this.
John, and you know from that finance
Well, I'm just
degree
telling you, you're
that
talking about
everybody
I
in
go around.
finance
Well,
absolutely
first off,
agrees
Franklin,
with you.
you're talking about I go around and I don't understand, and then I point out, by the way,
No,
I
think
actually have
you
a degree in
I think you have
finance.
surrendered your brain to a series of illusions.
You mean the
and you're
illusion that
incapable of
the
getting out
free
of
market built the strongest country and market system in the
I
world?
absolutely think that, John. I absolutely think
you know,
that.
Franklin-
But I also think we haven't had a true free market in America in the last 100 years.
Yeah,
And every
and
economist
you're
I know.
right. And
in
guess
that
what
100
political
years-
party?
and in that
Guess
100
what
years-
political party has controlled us
in that
basically
100
for the
years,
last 100
we've had
years?
more economic growth
The
than the
Democrat
rest of the world
Party.
in the history of the world.
The Democrat Party has controlled us in those years, and that you're right.
Well, it was
they
a
have
pretty darn
kowtowed.
good deal for the Republicans then, wasn't
They
it?
have kowtowed to the big labor, and you will destroy and strangle this country. And by the way, Franklin, you went apoplectic last week when I said the president was a Marxist. Well, guess what? He had an opportunity to prove me wrong in Argentina this week, and he even brought the words up himself. Socialism versus capitalism, and he told a young person with the rest of their life ahead of them in South America, there's not really any difference between socialism and capitalism. Just pick whatever works. So the Marxist president, as I said he was, had an opportunity to prove me wrong, and he couldn't get past his Marxist
Once
theory.
again, you're unable to see the forest for the trees. That's your problem, John.
Did he bring up capitalism and socialism in the same sentence? Did he choose the words?
Okay.
Did he equate the two systems together and actually say there is no difference?
He's done more to
Did
promote
he say there's no
capitalism.
difference? Answer the question, Franklin. Did
Yes,
he say?
John, but
So,
I'm not letting you get away with these lies over and over again.
is that a lie?
Yes, it is.
I just brought up what he said.
Because, John,
so his own words
because
are lies.
This is what you do. You pick out little sentences and you ignore what somebody does. What he's done is promote capitalism all through Central and South America and done more to help those people and promote capitalism than all of your Republicans have done in the last 50 years.
What did Cuba do for him?
Did he draw any?
What
And he's
did- what-
promoting
what did-
capitalism there too.
What did Cuba? What have they done so far?
What they've done, they've opened a bunch of American businesses
And who
there
will
in
get
the
that
last
money?
year.
Who owns them?
American businesses
no,
do.
Who owns the Cuban business?
Yeah,
the Cuban
who
half
owns
of it.
Yeah.
The government.
And Cubans are getting it, and they're getting to spend
No,
more
they're not
time.
getting it, Franklin. Only their allies get it.
John, if you ever pulled your head out of your illusions, actually out of Ronald Reagan's behind, we might make some progress
Franklin,
around here.
why would someone in such a wonderful country as Cuba that you're describing get on a rubber raft
Tell me
and
when I
try
said
to
that, John.
sail
When
90
did I say
miles
that?
to
When did I say that? One time in the years you've known me, when have I said anything about Cuba being a wonderful country?
You just did.
No, I didn't.
You said they're going to
That's
benefit
just
from all
another
this.
of your lies. one after another. You can't tell the truth. You can't get out of the weeds
Let me
of this
tell the
stupid
truth.
I've heard
stuff.
Cuba was a wonderful country.
It-
At one time.
It was
At
before
one time.
the communist revolution.
And how did we get the communist revolution?
Because
How
you
did
had
we
the
do that?
Soviets over there fomenting communist revolution.
Did it have anything to do with us propping up yet another dictator down there beforehand?
Well, it probably did, Franklin.
Oh, okay.
It may have been a reaction, but that doesn't mean it
Same
was the
thing
right.
as always,
Franklin,
John.
no,
you guys
missed
can
the
never
point.
look at the long term.
Look, we may have had something to do with people being upset, but choosing communism was not our choice. And let me just read you the.
We
you keep
may have
saying
had
facts.
something to do with it.
This is
Just
the
like we may have had something to do with the Ayatollah Khomeini becoming the supreme Ayatollah of Iran, because we backed up the despot before him.
You mean the Shah who actually built the country and did have actually some freedoms. Now, look, I'm not defending he did some bad things. But, Franklin, all in all, the Iranian people were better off then than now.
The point is, if your party were ever able to look at the long-term impact of what they were doing, we could avoid a lot of these disasters.
Oh, you mean like doubling the labor costs for industries like your party can't look at? By the way, Franklin, you want facts? Here's the exact quote. You don't have to worry about whether it neatly fits into socialist theory or capitalist theory. You should just decide what works. So that's the leader of the freest, strongest capital market country in the world, and he can't when an opportunity is given, he couldn't draw a distinction and say capitalism is better. So you want to know why I say he believes Marxist theory? That's why.
The Supreme Court handed out organized labor a majority victory yesterday.
No,
No,
they
we had
didn't
a tie
hand it a majority victory.
Well,
They had a tie.
Well,
Which results in that.
deadlocking to a 4-4 in a case that threatened to cripple the ability of the public sector unions to collect less from workers who chose not to join and did not want to pay for the unions. Collective bargaining.
Well, let me stop you for a second. That's the New York Times. That's the way they write a story to flavor the story. It's not that they had to charge less. It's that people said, under free association, I don't want to belong to that union. Right. And they are forced by the Democratic lackeys in the California state government to pay dues, whether they want to belong to that group or not.
Well, what this article is really referring to is how just Scalia being dead, just this amount of time has changed things.
Sure.
Already.
They were going to lose that case.
That's right. They were going to lose the case, and now it's tied, which basically doesn't change anything. Bad deal, isn't it? Do you think that if you don't want to be a part of a union or pay fees or anything, you should be forced to?
They get all the benefits.
Well, frankly,
what are the benefits?
Increased wages, more job protections, more benefits. That's the argument.
More funding for Planned Parenthood.
That's the argument that they don't decline the benefits.
Can't be fired.
Well, Franklin, let me ask you a question. I personally am a huge believer in the Second Amendment and people owning guns. Tennessee is a very strong conservative state, and we now would say Republican state. How would you feel if they decided that everybody benefited from individual rights of owning guns, and there was a lowering of the crime rates and things like that because of that? And so we're going to force everyone to pay dues to the National Rifle Association.
And if you don't have a gun, you go sign up to get
one.
No.
We're just going to force you to pay dues to the NRA. Would you support that?
Well, if I went to work for the NRA, I might.
They don't work for the union. Those teachers out in California don't work for the union, Franklin. Okay. That's a false equivalency, and you know it. So I'm asking you, how would you feel
first of all, I think that metaphor is ludicrous.
You to pay dues to the National Rifle
Association. The government isn't forcing anybody to do anything.
Out there, the California government is forcing teachers who don't want to belong to the union to pay union dues anyway. Okay. That's what this case is about.
That is the argument, John.
Well,
that is the argument.
So, folks, that's how you get Marxist theory. We are a planned economy, and we will force you to do what we want you to do.
All I know is
you wouldn't want
all I know is unions are a lot weaker now than they were 40 years ago, and 50 years ago, and 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And the middle class is shrunk
all
the time as those unions have gotten less powerful.
Then answer me why the plaintiffs in that case. Answer me why the plaintiffs in that case then would argue against joining the union? Why is union membership falling if they're so wonderful for everybody?
A victim of the same delusional thinking.
So there you go,
you're
folks. Once again, that's good Democratic theory. You're stupid. If you don't do what Franklin thinks you ought to do or the Democrat Party thinks you ought to do, you're stupid. And so the government should
John,
step in and force you to
I
do
don't
it.
think you're stupid, but I think perhaps that there's a medication or something that will
There you go,
solve this
folks.
problem.
And by all means, put people like that in charge of your government. Put people like that in charge of the force of government.
Let's talk about Trump's campaign chief being charged with battery. Tell me what battery is.
It's an offensive touching
An
of
offensive
someone
touching. An offensive
under Tennessee law. That's essentially the it's a physical contact that a person of ordinary sensibilities would not appreciate or think warranted.
If I was being paid to protect someone, if I were being paid to protect someone, and someone was rushing up, trying to get into the face of the person I'm trying to protect and so forth, if I reached out and grabbed their arm and just kind of asked them to step back.
That likely would not be an offensive touching.
Okay. Do you think
If
that's...
you grabbed them and threw them to the ground, that might be.
Well, now I watched the videos.
I'm not
Did you
saying
see
that's
anybody
what
hit
happened.
the ground?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying.
Well, that's what she
it's-
claimed.
No, she didn't,
claimed
Steve.
that.
She said that
the
he
question-
jerked her back, almost pulling her to the ground.
Yeah.
She didn't say he pulled her to the ground.
Well, almost pulling her to the ground.
Almost is
wait a
not
minute,
the
wait a
same
minute,
thing as pulling her to the
wait
ground.
Wait a minute. Almost here is when you watch this video. There was no jerk reaction.
Okay, I'm not taking a side on that. I'm saying that's what would an ordinary person perceive in that circumstance. That's the determination of that.
What do you think about the charge of battery, John?
Here's what's really hard for me, Steve, and you know, when I listen to you start down this road, I know where we're
I just
going.
asked about
and
battery.
It doesn't
Just
make any
a simple
difference.
question.
I know. I'm going to get there.
I'm talking about the law.
I understand.
Period.
Here's the point to this. That girl was actually a Trump supporter before all this started. And there are so many things that the Trump campaign has done now. For example, they said, oh, she waited 3 days before she filed this charge. Well, the reason is she asked for an apology. And if a simple apology had come, hey, you don't even have to admit wrong in an apology. You say, hey, you know, it's.
I'm sorry it happened.
You know,
What?
it's rough
What was
down.
the apology supposed to have been for?
For grabbing her, which he clearly grabbed her. Now, that's another problem
asked her
for
to
them.
step back?
That's another problem. Originally, he said he never touched her. Then this second video comes out, and it's clear that he did touch her. So we've got a problem with that. At the point where she asked for the apology, the campaign said, well, we're not going to apologize for anything, and if he did it, why didn't you file charges? That's the point at which she said, fine, I'll file charges. Now, the other problem you've got is that same Corey Ladowski is seen having a confrontation with a protester out in the middle of the hall. The problem with that image right there is, at least with the Michelle Fields situation, she was talking to Trump. I guess Trump was leaving. She wanted to continue talking to him.
It's all over with. She's the only one chasing him.
Right. Well,
Okay.
I mean, my point is she
I
had
just
been
get it all
there,
out, John.
and so the campaign manager is generally with the candidate. Tell me why that Corey Ladowski was in the middle of the arena when there's all kinds of security people. So he goes to this protester and gets into a confrontation with her. That kind of speaks to his.
Do you think he just picked her out and decided he wanted to be tried to do this to her and be mean to
Well,
her?
actually, no. I think that basically we're in charge and we say what we want to say and we don't say what we don't want to say. And she crossed him and he wanted away and he pulled her back. Now, I'm not a big believer in these kinds of things clogging up the court. I don't think it's a huge deal. But again, my point ultimately to you as a candidate, the Trump campaign could have alleviated all of this by simply saying, we're sorry you got
Let me
drunk.
ask you this. If it had been in the Cruz campaign, would it have been a different story for you? If one of Cruz bodyguards had reached and pulled away when somebody stuck their
First
face
off, he's
in
not a
somebody else's
bodyguard.
face?
He's the campaign manager.
Well, I know it, but he says he does act as a person to help guard Trump.
No, I would be saying the same thing. My big thing for this is the political stupidity of it. You know, for me,
I think the charge is stupid.
well, it is, but my point
Well,
is
you
they
never
brought the
said
charge.
that.
They brought the charge on themselves by refusing to simply make it go away. All they had to do was say, "We're sorry, you got kind of roughed up in the pool,"
No,
and that'd been the end of it.
John, you know better than that.
She was a supporter.
If they had said that, I'm telling you, it would
Steve,
have been
she's
a
a
different world.
listen. She
She'd
was
had
a
an attorney.
supporter.
She'd got lawyered up.
She was a supporter of Trump's. She was a conservative reporter for Breitbart who is actually supporting Trump.
Big supporters of Trump.
She was an actual supporter of Trump
Why is she not working for that company anymore?
because Breitbart thought it was more important to side with the Trump campaign than to take care of their employee.
I want to know.
You got to love this stuff, right?
I want to know what you thought about last night. All three candidates, Trump, Kasich, and Cruz, backed off their pledge to support whoever the GOP nominee is.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Isn't that
pretty
amazing? I mean, really and truly, is that not amazing? What's your opinion, John?
Look, I've said this all along. I'll support Trump if he gets it, but I will tell you, this is a hostile takeover of the Republican Party because he's not a conservative. That's my problem with him. It's been my problem all along. He's not a conservative.
Kasich said he may have spoken too soon when he made the promise. He said, I've got to see what happens if the nominee is somebody who's hurting the country and dividing the country. I can't stand behind him. Trump said he didn't want Cruz's support anyway.
That's what I like about Trump.
Well, I'm glad you like it, Steve, because in the fall, it'll elect Hillary Clinton. That's what frustrates me.
No, frankly, let me tell you what's going to elect Hillary Clinton, the GOP.
Yeah, I know.
The crap
See,
they're
that
pulling
is
out.
such a, think
they
about
are.
what you're
And
saying.
Chris-
So in other words,
John.
because we don't do what Trump wants
wait
us
a
to
minute.
do, it's our
No,
fault.
it's because you're not letting the American people make this decision.
Well,
here. You got a Republican.
unless, of course, the
wait a minute,
rules
you got
don't
a
fill-
Republican that swore that he would uphold.
Your
the
guy
GOP
said he
rules.
wouldn't either. Said he
No.
wouldn't support Trump or Cruz.
No. He said he would. When he changed
So
it, he
did
said
Cruz.
he would.
But what did he say last night? He didn't want Cruz's support anyway.
Well, isn't that something? What do you expect him to say after the way he's been
I
treated?
expect him to be reaching out to people, not.
And Cruz said he wasn't going to support anybody who attacked his wife.
Look, did you see the tweet he sent out? He picked the ugliest picture he could pick of Heidi Cruz and basically said, she's ugly. And that's all it said. She's ugly for all practical effects. Look at my wife. Look at his wife. She's ugly. That's not presidential timber.
I didn't see that, and I didn't see how it was presented, so I can't respond.
Well,
to
let me
that.
give you another one. The picture of his wife where she's nude. By the way, there were actually 13 pictures in that set, and she's more nude in some of those pictures. Gets really interesting. He's upset because he says this no Trump PAC put it out and said, hey, look, this is bad. You know, you don't want this as your first lady. Do you know when those pictures were taken? They were taken for GQ magazine in 2000 by the Trump organization to promote his run for the president in 2000. So the only reason those pictures are even out there is because Mr. Trump himself posed his wife. At that point, she was his girlfriend, posed her naked, had the photos taken, and ran a story in GQ magazine promoting a run for president. But now he's claiming he's been aggrieved because someone actually put it out and said, look, this is the future first lady. So he created the situation to begin with.
I never thought I'd see this out of John towards a Republican.
He's not a Republican. That's my problem.
He's going to
You're
win it.
listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You've arrived. Whoop Island is your hometown oasis. WOOP LP Cleveland. Whoop Island. Radio 99.
Check into cash. The cash you need today is waiting for you at Check into Cash. It's your money, so come in and get it.
Get a payday advance today for up to $425. At Check into Cash, we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
The cash you need is right here, so stop worrying and stop in to Check into Cash today.
Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
From 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
Train Endurance Engineers are an elite group of extremely devoted individuals who stop at nothing to push our heating and cooling units to the brink. That way, when they pick up the pieces, they'll know exactly how to make the Train we install in your home even more reliable. Right now, their target is a Train AC unit.
Testing control. Fire up the pitching machine.
Their methods may seem unconventional.
Okay, cue the jackhammers.
But it's because of their tireless efforts that it's hard to stop a Train.
When you want an unconventionally efficient heating and air unit that keeps your home right in the comfort zone day in and day out, nothing will do but a Train. To get the best Train service, call your local Train comfort specialist. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. Keeping you comfortable is Mechanical Systems' only business, and they've been providing high-quality service and installations for more than 30 years. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. That's 336-5739.
It's hard to stop a Train. Really hard.
Yeah, you looking for something sweet? I know you are. Bring your little sweet self to the Village Bake Shop. Around since 1961, there ain't a baked good in the galaxy the Village Bake Shop can't whip up for you. So when you're ready to treat your mouth to a taste you won't soon forget, get over to the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center. Or give them a call at 476-5179. You dig?
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back. We're live. We're in action. I've got to ask you, Franklin. Bernie's doing pretty good against O'Hillary, isn't he?
Yeah, he has. He's at the. I believe this is my opinion, nothing else. I think we're at the stage of the race where the calendar has favored him more in terms of the demographics and the kinds of caucuses, for example, is a big part of that. So I think that has favored him.
What would the race be if you pulled the superdelegates away from Hillary?
She'd be up 280 delegates.
We got a call, guys. Mm-hmm. All right, caller, you're live.
Hello? You talking about Bernie Sanders?
Yeah.
been in the trucking business all my life, and he made one of the most, I guess, the stupidest statement that I've ever heard anybody make, is that if he's elected president of the United States, he's going to take the trucks off the highways. and you know,
he must have bought into the train industry or something. He's probably got some stock there, you think?
You know, the thing about it is, what he needs to do is he needs to turn around in front of a full-length mirror and see what's hanging over his hind end, and the clothes that he's got on his back, the shoes on his feet, and then go to the grocery store that he probably had never been in a long, long time, and look down the aisles at the shelves and see what's on the shelves and try to figure out who brought it there. You know?
I understand what you mean.
And it's, I know that there's a whole lot of things in the trucking industry that you don't agree with, and I know that
I don't have anything with the trucks, except there's a whole lot of them on the road these days. You're right about that.
And, you know, I can't believe that anybody would make that kind of a statement. You're talking about Trump's campaign manager. He just has not run up on the right one yet and challenged them, because somebody will whip his tail. And, you know, the first time he jumps up in front of somebody that's a real bodyguard, they'll hurt the guy, and that'll be really bad.
You talking about Trump's campaign manager?
Yeah, the one that's had the confrontations with the women and the guy in the hall and all that other stuff. He needs to take a chill pill.
Okay. Thanks for calling.
All right.
See you. Where were we? Bernie Sanders. You think he's got a chance to win?
Well,
he's coming on pretty strong. Took 3 states.
No, let me just. John was making a comment. It's perfectly valid, but the facts are that in the earned delegate race, she's farther ahead of Bernie Sanders right now than Barack Obama was ahead of her at that point. And the math was inevitable then. I don't think it's changed. So it's entirely possible that he could continue to do well, but he can't make up the difference in the delegates because of the proportional awarding of them in the primaries.
Franklin, let me ask you this. Do you think the people that are supporting Bernie are just don't know what they want, or do you think they know what they want and this is what they want?
I think that, this is going to sound crazy to you, but I really do think that there's a common element there. I think there's something that the Sanders supporters and the Trump supporters have in common, and that is that they want somebody who doesn't seem like he cares what everybody else thinks, and that's what the appeal is. Whether I agree or disagree with everything Bernie Sanders says, I think largely he's very sincere in his views and beliefs. I think that's tapped into something that the electorate feels about the political process in general, and something that they want more of from their leaders. On the Trump side, I think this notion that he'll say anything and do anything gives at least the impression that he's not beholden to anybody, and therefore that has an appeal to him. I think that's a similar vein. You may be talking about some different parts of the population, but that's something they have in common. That's what I think.
Well, there's some interesting polling out right now on millennials, and most of these people that his base of support are the millennials. And what they found was, as they reach a threshold earning point of $40,000 to $60,000 a year, the majority of millennials come to oppose income redistribution, including raising taxes to increase financial assistance to the poor. So when you're living at home in the basement of your parents, Bernie's socialism, which, by the way, is Marxist theory. Are you going to get mad at me for saying Bernie subscribes to Marxist theory? They support it when they're living at home in the basement on someone else. When they start earning their own income, that support actually pretty substantially flips it over to 57% oppose.
That's when they got to pay the taxes.
When they start having to pay the bill, they actually come over.
All right, let's take a call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
All I have to say is Hillary for prison and Bernie for the retirement home.
Hillary for president, Bernie for the
prison.
retirement.
She said for prison.
Oh, Hillary for prison. Okay. Bernie for the retirement home.
Yes.
Well, that might work. That probably will work. What do you? What do you think about Trump?
Trump, he's okay. There's this what's been going on here recently. A bunch of trash, but it's
Yeah, that's kind of. Don't you think it's kind of made up a little bit? You know, he grabbing her and almost forcing her to the ground.
starting to sound like the Jefferson Adams candidate runoff in 1880.
Mm-hmm.
Or 1880, yeah. Or 1780, that's what it was, wasn't it? Or was something like that.
You think Trump's going to win this thing?
1800.
You think?
Do I think so?
Uh-huh. You think he's going to win the Republican side?
I don't know. It's going to come down to the wire, but I think Cruz might end up taking it, or they might end up teaming up if the establishment tries to take it in a bad way, like trying to broker the convention. I think Trump and Cruz might end up just getting together just to show them they can't do it.
You think maybe like the GOP buying ads at the debate last night against Trump might have hurt them?
Say that again?
You think the GOP group putting together an ad on television last night?
Well, but Steve, that's not an official GOP group. It's not the party that did that.
Who was it then?
Well, I'm sure it was some Republicans that are opposed to Cruz. Last time I checked,
that's close enough to me, John.
But so let me. All right. Let's follow that logic out, Steve. So, what organization do you think ought to be in charge of deciding who can run an ad and who can't run an ad?
Nobody. Anybody can run an ad.
Well, then don't complain about someone running an ad.
Here's the real issue, I think.
Takes a lot of money to run an ad, doesn't it?
It does, but this
Okay,
is a free country.
I just want to make sure.
I think it's entirely possible that you get to the convention and Trump does not have enough delegates to win the nomination.
Which happened to, by the way, Abraham Lincoln. He did not have the delegates when he got to the convention. He lost on the first two ballots.
Are you still there, caller?
But I think that he will get there with a substantial delegate lead.
That's probably true.
I think that's true. So the question really becomes at that point, if
the GOP's going to let him have it.
Well, no, wait a minute, Steve. There are actual rules that people generally have to follow.
Hold on.
Damn.
As I understand,
we're going to change them like the Democrats did.
As I understand the rules, on the first ballot, everybody's bound.
Actually, it's state by state because the Republican Party believes in states' rights.
Okay.
In Tennessee, you're actually bound the first two ballots.
Okay. There is a point where you become unbound. And at that point, the question is, will enough Republicans decide that they dislike Donald Trump enough or are concerned enough about him that they will then turn their support to somebody else? You've heard all kinds of names floated around, good or bad. I'm not getting into that. But what the effect is on whoever becomes the nominee at that point. I think that's the legitimate question to be talking about. We get lost with all the emotion and stuff sometimes, but ultimately there's either a benefit or a loss in making that decision that we're going to give it to somebody who didn't earn it in the primary process. And how does that affect them in the general election?
If Trump is within 100, does he win?
I don't know. Abraham Lincoln wasn't. And he won.
I think the legitimate question that you ought to be talking about is if Trump's within 100, I think within 200 is likely. Within 100, not as clear. But that's still pretty close and way ahead of anybody else. If it's denied him at that point, what do those Trump supporters do in the general election?
Well, only 29% of them are registered Republicans in the first place.
Well, but there are people who have to vote for them.
29%, Steve.
In the general election is what we're talking about. What do those Trump supporters do at that point? Do they simply sit home, or do they get out and vote for whoever the Republican nominee is? Are they going to? And I'm not
I think
I'm not taking a side on this debate, but are they going to get out and work for the person that Trump spent 2 months calling lying Ted Cruz?
Guess what? You have the same thing on Hillary's side. The Bernie Sanders people are
Absolutely.
very unhappy.
Absolutely.
And they feel like the system was rigged to favor Hillary. And are they going to stay home? Now, I will tell.
You know it probably was, don't you?
Oh, it is rigged. It's
rigged. We had this. Well, you can say that if you want to, but the exact same system was present in 2008 with Obama and Hillary.
And they rigged it for him.
It did.
Right, because the powers that be decided to rig it for him.
Well, that's a pretty amazing statement because back then she was backing on superdelegates making a difference for her, and they didn't.
But he was the golden child.
Well,
the first black president.
Whatever you want to say, John. The point is that they were able to patch those differences up and to get through that. It's a perfectly legitimate question for you to ask that about the Sanders-Clinton folks. That's fine.
By the way, new polling shows millennials strongly prefer Ted Cruz over Hillary Clinton by a 51 to 37 margin. And among the same voters, Clinton leads Trump by over 20 points. So according to millennials.
All the polls show both Clinton and Sanders decidedly, double digits, beating Trump and Cruz. Kasich, on the other hand, actually polls pretty well.
Well, actually, among millennials, Cruz
not about millennials. The whole country is what we're talking about.
Well, the last polling, actually, some of the polling shows Cruz winning.
Over who?
Over Hillary.
I haven't seen any polls that said that.
Actually, there have been a lot of polls that showed that.
Not recently.
Anyway, I think Trump will take it all. I think it's over. I don't think they can stop it.
Well, Steve, let me give you
the Trump train is coming.
Let me give you another example, and this is where you sort of worry about his judgment. Okay, he has hired now a convention manager. Trump has.
Good.
Now, this guy was the Gerald Ford convention manager in the 1976 race against Ronald Reagan. So he's got Republican ties, and he apparently has sort of specialized in the convention. Fine. All right. The problem is he's been gone for about 8 years. And where he's been gone is he went to the Ukraine to manage a campaign for the Ukrainian president over there. He then stayed on as a personal advisor to the president after he won the race. Now, this is the Ukrainian president that allowed his troops to massacre people in the square, has now fled to Russia, and is wanted by the International Court for human rights violations, and is now hiding in Russia. That's the guy he hired to be his convention manager at the Republican National Convention. Now, the guy may be fine.
You think he might be trying to lay a
No, here's my
plan for
point.
making friends?
If I'm Trump and I know that I have these things that some people hang their pegs on, that I'm out of control or that I'm a little bit of a bully, I probably don't hire the guy whose most recent stint was protecting the communist dictator of a European country.
I've got an answer for you. Trump doesn't do anything the way the rest of the Republicans do, John. Just remember that. He doesn't do anything the way the Democrats do it. Remember that.
Yeah, he does, because his positions are more Democrat.
He thinks it needs. He does it the way he thinks it needs to be done, and that's what America's wanting. They're tired of the Republicans in Washington doing nothing. They're tired of the Democrats, the liberals. They're tired of all this.
Okay.
What about Apple? Are they in trouble with the government, or is it over?
It's over. Case is over. Been dismissed.
Should Apple have?
Apple's more concerned now with the fact that the government succeeded on its own.
Apple's upset because somebody hacked their phone.
Yeah, sure. Because security is one of the selling points for the device.
You know, we can go on and on about these national politics right now. You want to talk about some local stuff? I don't really know. I haven't been keeping up with the news this month. I grabbed a couple of papers, and the commission opened talks about new budget and taxes, and requested budget increased about 1.8%. But Mayor Davis is going to try to do this without any tax hikes, counting to tackle 24.5 in capital projects. Mayor faces tasked with budget proposal with no tax hike. How are we going to do all that?
Well, what's the consumer price index increase? It's not 1.8%. So why is government going up 1.8%? I mean, why?
I don't know.
And if you go up 1.8% every year, guess what? Eventually, you're going to be forced into a tax increase.
I was reading. I read a little bit of.
They're trying not to raise the fire tax either.
Well, Mayor Davis was talking something about they gave somebody a raise, which was not in the budget, and that that shouldn't have been done. I mean, the county commission, I guess, voted to give the fire people a raise or something.
Well,
that wasn't in the budget.
The fire, once again, I want to know, when is someone going to show us how much we would have been paying right now under the contract for fire coverage with the city versus what we've spent on the county fire department? And that is nothing to do with the men and women that risk their life daily in the fire department.
You think we'll ever see those numbers?
No, you're not going to see those numbers.
In a comparison?
Because Mayor Davis wanted the fire department, and he did, it's going to save us money. Really? Because every cost we've seen has been an increase over the budget that we were told it was going to be. We've seen them increase the size of the fire tax area. Geographically, more people are paying the fire tax than originally were. We've seen it increase. Now we're actually trying to avoid another increase. So did we save money or not? And will someone actually tell the taxpayer whether we
Do you think it was actually Mayor Davis or the whole county commission?
Well,
the county commission was fighting with the city council.
Well, it was all of them.
Yeah. So it was all of them.
Just for informational purposes, the inflation rate in 2015 was 0.7%.
So 0.7% increase in costs and a 1.8 increase in the county budget.
All right.
Now, why?
That's a good question, John. I want you to ask that question one more time.
Well,
why?
Why are we seeing a 1.8% increase? And maybe it's justified. Maybe we've got some new services that's covering.
Well,
but tell us.
A couple things. First of all, I mean, I'm not taking a side here, but first of all, we may have had enough economic growth in the county that doesn't require a tax increase. Number one, that's possible, right?
But here's
agree with that,
again,
right?
as a mean old conservative, why don't you give that money back to the taxpayer?
Secondarily, we've been critical on this show over the fact that we haven't budgeted for maintenance, for example, on some of these projects. Maybe there's an attempt to start doing something like that. That would be a good thing, I think.
I said that. Tell us where it's going.
Okay. And then third, if there are identified future capital projects, some of that being directed toward that for the future would be a wise thing. So I don't know if any of those things apply or not, but those are possibilities anyway that would make good government sense.
Well, it would at least explain it. I still think, why don't you let the taxpayer keep more of their money? Put some money back into the taxpayers' pockets. Because those people can use that money. Those people can spend that money the way it benefits their families best.
All right, I want to ask you guys a question. I want both of your opinions. This was an article that was in the Banner recently, came from nowhere, but Cleveland City Council discuss hiring a national marketing website to promote Cleveland. Opinions. $30,000, and the price would be split evenly between the city council and the county commission and the Chamber of Commerce.
Well, as I remember the agreement, the hotel motel tax went to the Chamber of Commerce to fund these kinds of activities. So I would want to know, why are we not funding this the way? And quite frankly, the Chamber of Commerce has been very successful in increasing tourism dollars, increasing that money, and so their budget has increased over the years. Why do we now need to do this?
Well, I bet you the Chamber's going to come back and say they're going to pay their portion of it out of that. But they split it three ways: city, county, and Chamber. Well, let me rephrase that question. Why wouldn't the Chamber just pay the $30,000?
No, I don't know.
I think that'd be a legitimate question.
I don't know enough about the Chamber's budget.
I mean, I really don't know. I really don't know what's going on with it.
Although I'm going to take a slightly different view.
Go ahead.
If you can manage to get those three people to agree on something completely and to work together and to pay for it equally, I'm not entirely opposed.
But when do we discuss whether
it's a good trend?
All right, but wait a minute. Stop for just a second, Franklin. That assumes that it's a good expenditure of money. When do we discuss whether we need to be? I mean, as an individual,
I kind of like Cleveland.
Well, no, my point is, as an individual, I couldn't call up the New Yorker magazine and place an ad. Or, I don't have enough sense to figure out where to place some national ads. I got to hire a consultant. And by the way, I'm sure that's just the consulting fee.
This is for the website.
Well, I thought the whole point of a website is that you could run it from anywhere.
Yes.
We don't have local people able to put together a website that's nice enough?
It's more complicated than that.
Okay.
No, I'm not trying to dispute your point, John. But, I got to do marketing for my business. And I know that there's a highly technical side of it that involves what they call search engine optimization. And there are people who specialize in that sort of thing. And I can also tell you that degree of expenditure is not an exorbitant one as that goes. So I'm not going to on the immediately say that this is a bad idea. I don't know that, but by and large, I would say this: you could probably make a pretty good argument, particularly from the chamber's perspective, that they've been fairly successful in promoting Cleveland. And if with that track record, if they want to do some more things to up our game, I can't say that that's necessarily a bad thing.
Well, let me ask you something, both of you. Do we want to grow Cleveland more? Are we happy where we've got it?
Oh, I think
there are a lot of people that have, if you look at Cleveland over the years, we have a rush hour on Ocoee Street at 5 o'clock now. There are people that don't really enjoy that a whole lot. And if you've got a low unemployment rate, the argument then becomes we're fully employed effectively, because to be honest, a 3 and 4% unemployment rate is probably maximum. You really don't ever get 100% employment. Mm-hmm. So if we're bringing industry in and we have to bring more people in to fill those jobs, do we want that kind of growth?
First of all, a lot of the people in our community who are employed are also being employed outside of Bradley County. A lot of those people are employed in Chattanooga. So there's no reason
we have a lot of people from Chattanooga that are employed in Cleveland.
Sure. So it's not a fixed sum there. And if other people from other counties come here for jobs at that point, then they're going to be spending some money here too.
If you want to see something amazing, you go out here on the highway towards Polk County about 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Sure.
And look at the traffic headed back towards Polk County. It's amazing.
Well, people coming from North Carolina and North Georgia.
My other problem with these things is we look at them and we go, it's only $30,000. The problem is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Nobody said that it's only $30,000.
But my point is, we do these things without
that is not a large number for that service.
But Franklin, that feeds into the idea that unless you back up on a pretty regular basis and look at your overall budget, you can lose sight because these little things slip through, but the little things add up to a lot of money. And they add up to a 1.8 increase per year in the government budget.
All right, we've got about 2 minutes. Let's have a closing statement. Franklin, you first.
I think the Republican primaries for the next 6 to 8 weeks are just going to be a spectacle to behold.
All right. John?
I think that the FBI Director Comey and his top leadership has a good opportunity to threaten to resign if the Loretta Lynch and the Department of Justice don't do what it's clear they would have done to anyone else in Hillary Clinton's position and indict her, bring charges.
I think Hillary's in trouble, and I think Trump is moving on. Bye-bye now.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop